Today, we're looking at Diamine Maroon. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine Maroon is in the magenta-y area of colors. Although maroon is its own color, it falls within that magenta spectrum. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Levenger TrueWriter to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And there's a darker line across the bottom, and it pushes this pink up, and a very dark pink, but then we start to see this kind of brown across the top, which is rather interesting. A khaki brown. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I put it into water. That line across the bottom is a much darker, and it's really a maroon. The pink stays, some of the brown stays. We then see the pink push up and the brown across the top, which makes me feel like there might be a slight bit of hold on for this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it seems to perform fairly well. That extra fine does become more about a medium in its spread, but it's completely readable, and it didn't blow out so that I'm worried about highlighting any notes that I might take. Water only removed the top layers of the ink, leaving much of it behind underneath. Pen flush did way more than the water did. Now, I believe, looking at how light this is becoming with the flush, that given more than 30 seconds for pen flush on the page, that this is all that you would need to get it out of your pen. Bleach, as would be expected, obliterates the ink, leaving a little bit of yellow staining behind, but I don't believe that it would take bleach to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine Maroon has a viscosity of 2.07, making it just a wet ink, just in there as a wet. Now, to find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine Maroon has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it normal. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It has great shading in it. Really nice shading. Look at what's going on in maroon, where it's got this really nice lighter line through. The end gets, it's not even like it's just following the light, as I'm writing, it feels like it's almost following its own grain with the paper. It's really nice. The extra fine, no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does offer some really nice shading throughout. Look at what's going on in quick. The dark to light to dark to light to dark. That many transitions in one word. Brown starts very dark, gets very light, and it goes on like this all over the writing. And 9 seconds to dry. Now, the medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It offers the same kind of shading. In quick, it's like there's a line of lighter right down the quick here. Right down here, it's like there's a line of lighter and a line of lighter on the K, and the rest is a nice dark tone. Right in the middle of brown, it's nice and light. On the outsides, it's dark. Fox starts light and gets dark. It offers really nice shading. 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed me plenty of color variation. You're not coming through as much on camera. You look far left to far right and you can see it. We got a lot of color variation in the writing. I believe you could save this if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. Tomoe River offers
No bleeding, minor ghosting. It's Tomoe River. Minor ghosting is fantastic. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shading here. It just levels out while it's drying. You don't get to see it. The extra fine has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 16 seconds to dry. Same exact tone through all three of these. So for that, it's very consistent. I tend to put consistent with the word boring, which doesn't always mean a bad thing, especially for me. Consistent is predictable. That's boring. That's not a bad thing. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 21 seconds to dry. The scrubby of both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. And the smear test says you could likely recover it. Now I'll believe that. Rhodia. Rhodia gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some neat shading. It does offer us some neat shading inside the writing. Look at what's going on with the AMI is definitely darker than the beginning of the D into I, and then the middle of N gets darker into E. So it's really neat within the word. Really neat stuff. The extra fine has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. I'm sorry, I said no shade. My bad. That's not what I meant to say. We do get shading in here. The quick starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. The brown is a totally dark word, where fox starts light and gets dark. It's neat when it goes from a much darker to light all of a sudden, and it's just while writing. 11 seconds to dry. Medium, same tone as the extra fine. No feather spread, halo sheen, light shading. Light shading. And that's because it's going down a little darker, so then it's going from a dark medium to a darker, like on quick. In the middle of quick, it's that dark medium, and then it gets to the darker on the CK. Brown is a nice dark tone all the way through. Fox starts light and gets dark. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show us some color variation. We did get color variation, and the smear test says you could likely recover it, and I will believe it. What happens on yellow rhodia? The yellow rhodia has no bleeding, no ghosting, but does anything happen to the tone of this? Nothing. Exact same colors. Exactly the same. But sometimes it does affect certain other properties in the ink, like on the 1.1, no feather spread, halo sheen. I see no shading with the 1.1 with the yellow paper. The extra fine has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shading, and 11 seconds to dry. We lost the shading. The medium, no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. We lost the shading. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. The smear test says you could likely recover it. I'm going to believe that. White lines paper. Now there's a ton of bleed spots through, but this is a paper that you can use one side, take pictures, and send it straight to your notes, so I try not to fault it too much. But it would be nice to be able to use both sides. It's got a ton of bleed spots, which means it has a ton of show through. It did not touch the page underneath. It did not make the next page unusable at all. I just don't know about using the back of this page. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's very boring here. Boring in a bad way. It's just like, it's kind of a red. Not even maroon. Kind of a red. The extra fine is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 1 second to dry. So with that, it could be very good for note taking. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 2 seconds to dry. Now to me, this all looks like exactly the same tone. The extra fine and the medium show no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. And the smear test, you would be able to recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Original Crown Mill. Now with the exception of the scrubby where I'm putting it on stupid thick, there's no spots that are bleeding through, and we get no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, minor shading. The beginning of the M was darker than the rest of maroon. The beginning of Diamine was darker than the rest of Diamine until I reached the E. The extra fine had no feather spread, halo sheen, minor shading. The H is a little bit darker than the T or the E. The K is a little bit darker than the rest of quick. The B is a little bit darker than the rest of brown. The X is a little bit darker than the rest of fox. Minor shading throughout. 4 seconds to dry. It is a slightly different tone than we saw with the 1.1. When we go to the medium, it gets a slightly darker tone. Now, it's a slightly darker than the 1.1, so we do see 3 different tones happening here. The medium had no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shading at all here, and 7 seconds to dry. Now, when we look at the scrubby, the extra fine, when we look far left to far right, we do see a little bit of color variation. We did see little bits of color variation up here. The medium showed us none. We didn't get any in the medium. And the smear test, if you smeared while you were writing, you could likely recover this. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Maroon, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Colorverse Space Laika because that is a great brown. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Maroon? Now, this leans a little too red for me because red inks aren't my preference. If this was a red, it would offer excellent shading, which is something that's very rare to happen for me with red inks. I don't see a lot of reds that have great shading. If you know one, let me know. Thanks for watching.